Hey guys, happy Monday. Today is May 4th, and this is for Math 2. Today we're going to be talking about the vertex form of quadratics. Remember, quadratics have an x squared in them, and we've done lots of work with quadratics already in the past, but today we're going to look at what's called vertex form. So it's another way of looking at quadratics, specifically for graphing, okay? So this is the vertex form of quadratics. Again, notice that it's squared, the x is squared. Now you might say there's a lot of variables there. Don't worry, the a, h, and k all stand for something, okay? So we're gonna get to that right now, all right? So a couple of things. So the a value here, the a value tells me whether it's facing up or down, okay? So if my a value is positive, then it's gonna be facing up, my parabola. If my a value is negative, then it's going to be facing down, right? Now the a value tells me something else other than just facing up or down. The other thing my a value tells me is if my a value is a number that's bigger than 1, so like 1.5 or 2 or 17, then we know that this is going to be vertically stretched. Now, why is it vertically stretched? Because I'm multiplying, it says y equals, and I'm multiplying something by 2 or 3 or 4, so the y is getting bigger. Multiplying it by a bigger number, so the y is getting bigger. So it's getting stretched vertically, so it would look kind of thinner. It ends up looking kind of like this, like thinner. Okay? Now, if my a value is, I would say less than 1, but you got to be careful with that because then you get into negatives. So if my a value is less than 1, but also greater than 0, okay, so that means it's like 0.5 or 0.75 or 0.3 or 1/3, anything between 0 and 1, then that's going to be vertically compressed. Why compressed? Because again, if I'm multiplying by a number less than 1 here, like of half or something, I'm making my y value smaller. So if my y's are getting smaller, then it's getting squished down. So it's kind of getting fatter. So it's going to look kind of like this. It's going to get squished down. Okay? All right. Now, the h and the k, h and k, that's the vertex. It's where the vertex is. Okay? So notice that it says h minus h, right? So that means that if this right here is subtracting something, so if it's, I'll just put like, well, whatever, I'll just put a minus. If it's subtracting something, then it's actually going to move to the right. Now you might say, why in the world would it move to the right? Well, okay, the h is in the x value position, so it's got to be right or left. This negative is already part of the formula, so the h itself is actually positive. And then if it's a positive, that would be like subtracting a negative. That's going to move to the left. Okay? The whole graph is going to shift either right or left. And then the k value, as you can see right here, that's your y value. So this has a positive in front of it, so this just goes with what you think. So when it's positive, it's going to shift up. I'll put shift because otherwise it might sound like face up over here. So shift up. And if it's negative, it's going to shift down. Okay. Now, once you know those things, these questions are very easy to do, but you do have to kind of get used to that, right? So let's look at our first example here, okay? And let's see what we can do. So we have our first example. I'm going to look back up here at my notes, okay? So the first thing I see is I notice that there's a negative in front here. So if I look up here, when it's a negative in front, that means it's facing down. So the first thing I'm going to do when I describe my graph is I'm going to say that this graph is face down, because there's a negative in front here where the a is. Notice also that there's a 2 in front. So 2 is greater than 1. That means it's going to be vertically stretched. Okay. And then You could say by a factor of 2 if you want to be really specific. Then I have this -4. Remember, the minus is already a part of it, right? So it's really just 4. So it's moving to the right 4, shifting right 4. And then this is +5. So that's over here. If it's positive, it's shifting up. So shifting up 5. Okay. Now, if I wanted to graph, which I didn't ask you to do graphing right here, but you will have to do it eventually. If I wanted to graph this, I'd kind of make my little graph, just showing you what it would look like. Make my little graph here. So I'd start off with this part right here. So the vertex is obviously, if it's right 4 and up 5, it's going to be 4 or 5. So I would go to 4 or 5, go over here. I'll just make it a whole graph. It's fine. So 4 and then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'd be all the way up here. 4, 5. Right? And then it says that it's face down. So it's got to be facing down. Now, the stretch part, if I asked you to make a graph, if I did, I wouldn't really worry too much about the stretch. You definitely need to describe it, but it's going to be facing down. So we're going to have a graph that's kind of facing down like that. Okay, so you can kind of see how that is. Again, the graphing is not necessarily part of it, but I just wanted you to see how that translates into a graph. Okay, because you will have to go back and forth. All right, so let's look at a second example here. Same exact thing, okay? So, second example. Notice here that in front, the A value is positive. So that means that it's going to be face up because it's positive. Notice 3/4, that's a number in between 0 and 1. So that's going to compress it because it's making the y smaller. So it's vertically compressed. And if you want to be more specific, you could say by a scale factor of 3/4 if you wanted to be more specific. This is +6, okay? Now remember that in the original formula, there's a minus sign. So +6 is really minus a -6, okay? So this is not going to the right 6, it's going left 6. And this one doesn't have an opposite sign, so this is -7 shifting down 7. So the x is opposite of what you think, but the y is not. Okay? And if you wanted to graph it again, you could. So the vertex here, you can see left 6 would be -6, down 7 would be -7. So there's the vertex. You'd graph that first. It's going to be facing up and it'd be a little thinner. But again, I'm not worried so much about graphing the vertically compressed or vertically stretched part. Okay? So basically go here and make sure it's facing up. Let's look at one last one where it's going backwards, okay? So with this one, they're actually giving me the description. I'm gonna write the equation, okay? So I'm gonna start by writing the original equation just so we have somewhere to start with. Okay? All right, so it says write a quadratic function that has been shifted down 3, okay? So down 3, that's talking about k right here, okay? Down 3 would be -3, so I change it. I'm gonna do this one at a time, but you could do it all at the same time, of course. Okay, but I don't want anyone to get lost, so I'm doing it one at a time. So down 3, I would change that to a -3 because that's down 3. Okay, and then it says 4 to the right. Okay, so 4 to the right is this part right here. Remember, the minus stays put, so I'm just going to put the 4, +4 in for the h there. So that would shift it right 4. Again, it's minus because remember it's opposite for the x. And then it says vertically compressed by a factor of 0.5. That's the A value. I'm just going to change my A value to 0.5. Just making notes so no one gets confused as to what I'm doing. And then it says it's facing down. So that means I need a negative in front. Oops, I totally messed up my equal sign, sorry. And there you go. And there's my final answer. Now, like I said, you can do all that in one step. You definitely don't need to show all of these steps. I just didn't want anyone to get confused. I stopped circling here, but so I changed as I went. So one at a time, I changed each thing, but you can do it all in the same step, of course. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know, email, remind, or Google Classroom. I am here to help with whatever you need. Have a great day, guys.